Okay, this video is called, this is Frank Short. It's part number 5 of Frank Smith Quotes. Frank Smith Quotes. He says, how do you read a word you haven't met before? It's easy. We do it all the time. You just sort of fast map it is what Frank Smith says. You basically assume a meaning for it and see if that works for the sentence. And we do without even thinking about it. He says it usually takes about 6 times for you to get it. And it's also been shown by like this lady, Cato Loam, who was like world expert on learning languages fast. She would just read a novel in another language that she'd already read it before in her native language, and she would just guesstimate all the words, and she would learn the language like that. So about 6 encounters with the word, usually you'll know it by then. To determine a pronunciation, you want to hear somebody else say it. And he says, of course, none of these ways of identifying new words is possible if you learn them in isolation, like in a vocabulary list, which is how they're often taught in school. No good. Expecting children to learn new words by presenting them one at a time makes the reading as difficult as possible for them. The best way for kids to learn how to read is to practice reading. And that's how you get good at it, just reading a lot. And read whatever you want. It don't matter what the kid reads. Let them read a comic book. Let them read anything. A lot of kids like, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which I thought was totally stupid, but kids like it. I liked comic books when I was a kid. I even read comic books when I was in college. I used to read the Savage Sword of Conan, the Barbarian, because Stanford was kind of a wimpy place, and it kind of kept me mentally tough. Okay, Frank Smith. Everybody likes stories, and the absence of a story is boring. Why are stories so important? Because stories are our way of making sense of the world. Without a story, we have confusion. Even the facts, whatever they might be, they make no sense to us unless embedded in a story. Scientists, like all of us, need special stories for the things they do. They call them theories. They don't want a list of experiments and outcomes, and they don't want massive compilations of data. All of this could overwhelm them. They want a compact summary. They want a theory. Okay, Frank Smith continues. We all need a story of the world for the same reason scientists need their theories: to summarize our past, to stabilize our present, and to anticipate the future. Frank Smith continues. Why do you say reading is good for us? Because reading has 2 great complementary advantages. Reading expands and elaborates our story of the world to better enable us to understand whatever we are reading about. In other words, as we read, we become better at reading. Okay, and that's kind of like a key point. He then briefly is going to kind of go into this whole thing about B.F. Skinner, and B.F. Skinner is a guy with behaviorism. And then later on, Chomsky came along, and Chomsky refuted B.F. Skinner's theory of language. And then, the guy who went and visited the Paraha, I forget his name at the moment, but he claims to have refuted Chomsky. Not that anyone really cares. Chomsky's kind of point was we really don't get that much language exposure before we learn the language, so we're sort of designed to learn language fast. And then there's other philosophies of language that you should always encounter language in context. None of this broken down individual words at a time. That's kind of nonsense, okay? All right, here's something useful from Frank Smith. Why do some teenagers learn only 1,500 words a year while other ones learn 8,500? And the difference is if they read. If a person reads on their own, they just get smarter. That's why I think these guys are full of crap like Jordan Peterson. Oh, you can't increase IQ. That is not true. The reason why most people don't increase IQ is because they're lazy. Okay, the average human is a functional illiterate. Let's just be honest with it. I know tons of people, lots of doctors who I talk to all the time, and almost none of them read, okay? It's an unusually intelligent person that reads on their own. And the reason why most people don't read is they had it beaten out of them when they were freshmen in high school. But the ones who do continue to pick up books and read, they just develop much superior vocabularies and knowledge databases in their mind. And that's all you got to do is read. So just find a book to read. You don't have to be rich. You can go to the library and borrow books. You can go to the used bookstore and borrow books. But they have to see in their mind's eye, the child, to build up this habit that it's worthwhile, that it's enjoyable, it's pleasant. And that just comes from, doing it on your own, getting experience with it, and having the fun of picking the book yourself. Okay, but that's a giant difference in vocabulary. So like Frank Smith says, you learn to read by reading. And if you read a lot, your ability increases, your IQ increases. Readers then become better writers. And as they become better writers, they become better speakers. And they just get better at school all around. So that's it for Frank Smith today. Hope you found that helpful.